Good morning, Leon. Good morning, Irina. Okay,
All right, let me click over
so
here. There we go.
Good
I'm
morning.
going to good morning. I'm going to now
Morning.
mute all to cut down background noise. If you'd like to say something, just unmute yourself or ask whatever. Okay, so this week's Torah portion is actually a combined Torah portion. We have 53 Torah portions, and we need to be able to finish them, begin and finish the Simchas Torah holiday, and shortly thereafter the Shabbos afterwards. So every year there's specific calculations into how we get that done, because whenever a holiday falls on a Shabbos, we skip that week's Torah reading, and there's always something we need to be able to contract a little bit, and we want the 53rd one is for Simchas Torah, so it's not on the Shabbos necessarily. So you need to get 52 done on 52 weeks, and we don't know. We actually never have all 52 weeks available. So there are several sets, 5 different sets of Torah portions, which are combined depending on the year. All of them, some of them. So we've had that we're going to have 2 of them being combined to complete the 4th book of the Torah. And then where we are in the 4th book of the Torah, just to quickly run through it, we have the Torah is about lessons. It's not about history, but it's within historical context. It's starting from creation of the world and ends with Moses passing away and the Jews about to go into Israel. The Torah doesn't get us there. The book of Joshua talks about them going to Israel. So the second book of the Torah, the first book of the Torah goes through creation and Adam and Eve and Noah and his family, and then Abram and Sarah, all that unfolding. And so it takes a while. Then it brings us up to the Jews in Egypt. And once the Jews are in Egypt, then the Torah slows down significantly, because there's coming out of Egypt, there's getting the Torah, there is what comes after that. So really, up until that's the beginning of the second book of the Torah is the Jews in Egypt, and up to the middle of the 4th book of the Torah, you're still like a year and a half or so after they left Egypt, and they got a whole 40 years. So it was 2 weeks ago, the Torah skipped on the chronology end from a year and a half into the Torah, into their journey in Egypt, to the basically the last year of being in the desert. So we're missing like 38 and a half years of the history of it, because this isn't about the history. So towards the end of the 4th book of the Torah, we're told, Moses is told, that was what we read yesterday. Moses is told, good morning. It's no one would touch that.
No, what you
Towards the end of the 4th book, yesterday we read, God tells Moses he's going to pass away, he'll be buried in the desert, he has to designate a successor, and he does designate a successor. God tells him to designate Joshua. So we're really at the end of the line, but that's only 4 out of the 5 books. The 5th book of the Torah is all about Moses' final words to the Jewish people in the last 5 weeks of his life. It's kind of a recap and a farewell address. But if you want to just talk about the chronology, at some level, this is the end of the line. We're completing the 4th book of the Torah. And the 4th book of the Torah the end of it focuses a lot on the journey into Israel and the allocation of the land, the resettling of their ancestral land, that we had from Abraham and Sarah. And there's a process to it. Each of the 12 tribes, and that's going to be relevant to today, each of the 12 tribes has a leader, what we call in Hebrew a Nasi. Nasi in Israel today, called the president of Israel, is called a Nasi. It's the Hebrew word. Nasi is a biblical word, which means they didn't have presidents then, but a leader. Moses was, in a way, you could have technically call him a Nasi. The what we call the princes of the tribes is a Nasi. Later on in Jewish history, even in Roman times, the leader of the Jewish people, there was always a more titular head, and that would be called the Nasi. And that's going to come up today because we're going to be talking about leadership. Morning. So let's just do the overview first, even though the overview is not really going to touch on anything we're going to be talking about today, but it's good to have a little bit for, keep it in your pocket to know what the Torah portion is talking about. I'm going to share the screen. Okay. I'm sorry? It is page 18. Sorry. So in this combined Torah portion, Moses conveys to the heads of the tribes of Israel. There's the 12 tribes. It's actually 13 tribes. One of them is Levi, and they don't inherit, and it's the 12 tribes who are receiving land. The Levi they were more of a public servant tribe and working in the temple, so they didn't have their own land. They were supported by the community. But here, Moses conveys to the heads of the tribes of Israel the laws governing the annulment of vows. That's the beginning of it. Wars waged against Midian for their role in plotting the moral destruction of Israel, and the Torah gives the detailed account of the war spoils and how they were allocated among the people, the warriors, the Levites, and the high priests. The tribes of Reuben and Gad, two of the 12 tribes, these are two of the children of Jacob and his wives, later joined by half of the tribe of Manasseh, asked for the lands east of the Jordan River as their portion in the Promised Land. In other words, what's today probably Jordan or part of Lebanon, these being prime pasture land for their cattle. Actually, no, not true, but this is, yes. Moses is initially angered by the request, but subsequently agrees on the condition that they may first join and lead in Israel's conquest of the lands west of the Jordan. 42 journeys and encampments of Israel are listed from the Exodus to their encampment on the plains of Moab across the river from the land of Canaan. Also in Masseh, in the second of the two Torah portions, the boundaries of the Promised Land are given. Cities of refuge are designated as havens and places of exile for inadvertent murderers. The daughters of Tzlofchad marry within their own tribe of Manasseh, so that the estate that they inherited from the father should not pass to another tribe. So there's lots to talk about here, but we're going to be dealing with something specific. We're going to talk about. We're looking at the leaders of the tribes again. So there's this structure: Moses and his brother Aaron, who has since passed away. Then he has Joshua, who is just deputized as the next leader. There's Elazar, his great nephew, who's the high priest. There are spiritual functionaries, people, leaders of the Jewish people. And then take that down a level. Then there's the Jewish people have each their own lane of tribes. Someone as a leader of the tribe. Now, when we think of a leader, think of a leader. A leader is like it could be a band leader, or a mayor, a governor, a president. A leader is obviously you want someone with great character. We're not even talking about that part. The leader's function is to lead, to orchestrate, to envision, to notice. A leader needs to be a good manager. Well, obviously, a good leader has a good heart and all of those things. We're going to talk about a different type of definition of leader, which does not apply to our normal thinking. None of this leader is not going to end up on your choices in the ballot box. We're talking about a spiritual idea of a leader. I'm not knocking what's in the ballot box, but it's a different type in the booth, the voting booth. It's a different idea. I'm talking about definition of terms. And I want to say that the Jewish concept of a leader, before we get into this, the Jewish concept of leader is not just to lead the group, but to truly be invested in the needs of each individual of the group, which sounds like a lot, and it is. and to care. So and to then that's on the emotional end. So let's say my kids, it's not just me to show them the direction. I feel a connection to them. Does not only necessarily with kids. It could be with anyone. If there's a group, the idea of not just having a functional connection, but the idea of feeling a closeness and a care for what's going on, for what their fears, their loves. When it comes to a leader in this sense, on the Kabbalistic level, which we're going to touch today, it's not only the emotional, it's the spiritual. When someone ends up in a leadership position, and that's a sign that there's a spiritual connection, a soul connection. And that can mean also, if you have a sphere of influence, to take it, really bring it home, because not everybody's a leader. A leader is that leader, right? It can all be, this is probably not this is probably an outdated expression, but you can have all chiefs, right? The Indians also. Okay, I should take that off. There's not everybody's a leader. We all are leaders, and that was a very important element of the Rebbe's approach to life, is encouraging people to recognize that if they're alive, they have some sphere of influence where they're expected to, and they have the ability to, and they have the privilege to lead. Now, doesn't mean necessarily being called a leader or seen as a leader, but if you're in a group of people, or you're talking to a friend, and you say something inspiring, and you help that person shift their perspective on life and therefore their behaviors, you've just been a leader. And that's your job. Lead your own life and use opportunities to help steer the rhythm of relationships, of community. It depends how everybody has a different sphere of influence, but we all have some sphere of influence, even if it's with people in the office. To you can change the tone and the attitude in the office by just simply saying a positive word when everyone's down complaining about the supervisor. And again, you don't want to be sermonizing, but we have the ability to guide the spirit, to guide attitudes. We don't usually see that as being a leader. And I think the Rebbe's point was that when you talk about leadership, to see it as there are leaders, that can be true. But we're missing the point when we see that I need to be a leader. The lessons from Moses, and I'm not going to be Moses, and I'm not planning, I can't, it's not going to happen. But the lessons in leadership from Moses, or the heads of the tribes, they're in the Torah because they're meant for me. It's not just about history. It's about what does it say to me as a person. So to launch this, let's take this. This is not in the book, but what they put here is a. Let's just try to move this out of the way. Question for discussion. What do you think motivates Chabad, Shluchim, and Shluchot worldwide to encourage every Jew to perform even one more mitzvah? And Shluchim means emissaries, and Shluchim and Shluchot, question. Shluchim means, that's the way, technically, I don't have this on a business card, but technically my label in life is I am a Chabad Shaliach, an emissary to be able to go bring goodness and godliness to the world. My wife is called a shlucha. Shluchot is plural of that, which is because there's feminine, masculine, and feminine in Hebrew. Shliach and shlucha means the same thing, once men and women. We just brought a new couple here this week. They're called shluchim. That's it's now. What's the mission we're sent on? Right? I'm not. Yeah. It's I was sent to this neighborhood. Malk and I were sent to this neighborhood. We weren't really asked to come, right? Usually, you have a rabbi is hired by a congregation, and there's come together, and then they're invited in. No one invited us. We came uninvited. But well, one family out in Sterling said, that there are Jews here and they're not being attended to. So the job, the purpose was to see how we can help. Didn't come out here to make a synagogue. Didn't come out here to make a preschool. Didn't come out here to make anything. Came out here to see where we can help. No, but I probably would have made a barbecue anywhere I went because I like them. No, but what was the point? The point was to see how we can help. Where does that come from? That came from the Rebbe's call to say, you can't just sit here and take care of your religious lives, here meaning, let's say, Crown Heights at the time, when there's a whole Jewish community out there, talking about it 1950, 1951, post-Holocaust. The Jewish community is still reeling. Observance is not in a good place. Jewish self-image, feeling of connection after the Holocaust, it's like, what? People have full of questions and so on. And the Rebbe's point was, we all have an obligation to each other. And we want to go out there. And as Jonathan Sachs, the former chief rabbi of Great Britain, said, and I'm going to paraphrase him because I don't know if it's an exact quote, he would say that in describing, one of his ways of describing what the Rebbe did was, he said that just as the Nazis hunted down every Jew in hate, not just as, in response to the Nazis hunting down every Jew in hate, the Rebbe encouraged us to hunt down every Jew, to find every Jew in love. Hunt is a strong word, but to be able to go out there and find individuals. Somebody, you got a pulse, you need help, we don't need to know much more about it. And that is really very much what drives the Chabad idea. Now, it's not just for us. The idea is really for everybody. And as Jonathan Sachs said himself, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, and maybe you've heard this from me before, but I think it's apropos here. When Jonathan Sachs was not a Chabad guy, but he was a tremendously well-respected rabbi, chief rabbi of the British Empire. You can Google him. And he, after the Rebbe passed away, he wrote an obituary in forward, I believe. And I remember it grabbed me very much. And just to cut through his whole story, but he first met the Rebbe when he was a student in Cambridge. And he was a smart young man, and he went around, he made a list of, I think, 24 or 17 Jewish leaders around the world he was going to interview to find out about how they saw the state of the Jewish world. This is then the 60s, and where it was going. And he had on his list Rabbi Herson in Crown Heights. And he says he went into the Rebbe, and he had written a note, so he had an introduction. And the Rebbe asked him, he was going to interview the Rebbe. The Rebbe started asking him questions. So you're in Cambridge and you're observant. It was like modern Orthodox, I guess you'd call it. So you're able to keep kosher there? Yes. He said, what about kosher for everyone else? Other Jewish students. He said, I don't know. He said, maybe you can make a kosher kitchen, see what you can get started. He said, are the Jewish, you're able to keep your Jewish identity? Is there a Jewish social club? Said, maybe you can do that. So he wrote there, and I think he did it. He nailed it very well. He said that I came into the Rebbe's office expecting to find a man trying to attract followers, and I realized he was a man trying to create leaders, and that was very much the Rebbe. So this isn't just for shluchim and shluchot, so to speak, guys. People. That's my official, title. It's everybody. We're all God's emissaries to try and make this a better world. And part of making a better world is the influence for good, the Jew and non-Jew. Okay. So now let's take this portal through the Torah. And on page 20 is text 1 from this week's Torah portion. So in this week's Torah portion, the Jews are now preparing to go into Israel. There's the new land, the land of their ancestors, and now, but there are millions of people. They have to apportion it correctly, according to tribe, according to family.
Were these lands occupied?
They were, and what they did was they sent them they sent the messages that we're coming home, and we want to live in peace. So there's room for all of us. Yeah, they
Like you were saying to say about the right now the people from
no. Well, the people who there's no. I don't think you can find any a linear connection between the people who were there then and the people who were there in 1947. That's number one. Number two, this had been hundreds of years before. That was the land of that was given to Abraham and Sarah. So they were really coming home. Okay. And that's by the way, I think I know where you're going, but it's one of the yeah, okay. It wasn't vacant land. It was not vacant land. There were people there, and the book of Joshua talks about that. But the question was how the settling would be. And I guess since we have this, fortunately, as maybe not unfortunately, but as a hot topic, especially the past few years, Torah is a document, and it tells us that about God not only creating the world, but giving a land to the Jewish people. That Torah is, and its words are venerated by 2 billion Catholics, 1.5 billion Muslims, 1 billion Protestants. I mean, more than half the world's population believes in the Torah, or claim that, and as they do. They didn't even get to Jews yet, and that Torah states it clearly. From what I have read, the Quran says that God gave Israel to the Jewish people. And it was later leaders who said, well, that was then, this is now. But it's one of the things that Rebbe felt and advocated to leaders of Israel for decades was it's not honest and it's not strategically smart to speak about the Israel beginning at 1948, because then you say, well, who had it in 1947? So speak about as this is thousands of years of our land, and 1948, where we were able to create, an independent government. That's something else. So talk about it that way, but don't talk about Israel as the beginning of those 1948, because you're undermining yourselves. And he used to say, stand up in the United Nations and say, there's a Torah. Billions of people believe in it. It was given to us, and we have room for everybody, but to come live there. But it's ours. Don't say, well, because the Holocaust, and we took it away from someone else. That's not good. Okay. So now, text 1 from this week's Torah portion. These are the names of the men who will inherit the land for you. Eleazar, the Kohen, high priest, who was Moses' great nephew, and Joshua, the son of Nun. So they are what we would call maybe spiritual leadership. At least that would go there, right? The high priest, and Joshua was taking Moses' place. And then there's one tribe from each tribe to help you acquire the land. These are the names of the men, tribe of Judah, Caleb and Yefuneh, and it goes through each tribe. Now, if you talk about the leaders, without getting into, the Rebbe analyzes Rashi, we're not just getting to the leadership, we're not getting into the details of the commentary that Rebbe analyzes. I'm going to skip to text 5. But the point of this is leadership meant very functional. They're in the desert when they camped. Who made sure that there was a water for because there was a central area of water. They had to dig channels to bring water to this tribe, to another tribe. The the leader of each tribe had to be an administrator. Make sure everything's taken care of. These are, we're camping in the desert. These are the parameters. Does everybody have their food? Everybody got their sleeping bag? Whatever. Just make sure that things are running straight. That the trains are running on time. But there's another element that's deeper, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And here's from the Rebbe in text 5, and text 5 is page 24. There are two distinct elements to the tribal prince's role to provide for his tribe. Number one, he was the proxy of the Jews in his tribe to provide for all their needs. If something needed to be taken care of, he represented the Jews. It's like we have a senator in the Senate. We have House of Representatives. They're a leader to represent us, make sure we have what we need. That's functional. We're talking about now a much deeper level that you're not, as I said, going to get in the ballot box. Number two is that there was a divinely ordained leader appointed by Moses. God appointed Moses as leader of the nation, succeeded by Joshua, whom Moses appointed as leader at God's behest. In other words, these are representatives of God. Similarly, God, via his instructions to Moses, ordained each tribal prince the leader of his nation. You say God set you up as the manager, but if we say God set you up as something much deeper than just the manager to make sure everybody has a place to sleep and eat. This is about your soul. This is about the guidance of the soul. Now, what does that mean? Let's take it a little further. Text 6, which is on page 25. In continuation of this from the Rebbe, his role as a proxy of his tribe is primarily to worry about the communal needs of the collective. This is consistent with a custom in every country where people gather to appoint leaders who provide for their general needs, while each individual provides for their own personal needs. But that's not it. The role as a Jewish leader by divine ordination also pertains to the needs of the individual. This leader is not just the leader of the collective. He's the leader of every individual. Torah leadership means that, of course, you need to think of the needs of the collective. But the Torah leader can't sleep or has a hard time sleeping when individuals have problems. It's about the needs. The individual need, just like a parent. You have to care about the family, but if someone once told me, you're only as happy as your least happy child. You need to say, what do they need? Say, well, we're okay. There's a trust fund. Everything is okay, but someone's suffering. You can't just say, I'm taking care of the group. It's what's going on with the individual. That you say, well, the leader, that's not my problem. I just got to make sure that the roads are good and the mail is delivered. And that's true at some level. But in Torah leadership, what makes someone a Jewish religious leader, a Jewish leader, is that there's this care for what's going on and understand that there's a responsibility of the leader. The leader works for the people. And the Rebbe's wife, I have a video. She was a very private person, but I happen to have a video of this old cassette video. She was, because of a dispute, a very painful dispute over the Chabad library. Someone related to Rebbe's family wanted to claim that it was part of an inheritance, so it's a priceless library. I wanted to take some of that. And the Rebbe said that it doesn't belong to anybody. It can't be. It belongs to a community, not to any individual. And I actually went to court and Chabad won, but she was deposed. The Rebbe's wife was deposed. The Rebbe's wife was the daughter of the previous Rebbe and the wife of the Rebbe. So she knew she knew the business. And she was asked by the lawyer about They said, "Are you saying that what's called the Rebbe's library actually doesn't belong to the Rebbe, it belongs to the community?" And she said, "It's not only it's not only the Rebbe's library that belongs to the community; it's the Rebbe that belongs to the community." And it was a very wise way of setting the stage. Belong to the community. Say if they have a need, it's my need. I'm not just here, a white knight. If there's something bothering you, then I can't just say, well, see, take care. I'm not a dentist or whatever is bothering you. It's something that it's my problem. Yeah.
So, so this is a problem.
Mhm.
It's incumbent upon whoever the leader is.
Yeah.
I think, to, as you were saying, to help the other person, to help people under that person's charge to become leaders themselves, of themselves,
Correct.
and then tangentially, the other people whose life they touch. So how do you square? So basically, he's a teacher to teach and to have Rahmanis,
Yeah.
but also to teach
Yeah.
his emissaries how to do it for themselves so that they'll be able to then do it for their charges.
Correct. That's it was trying to inspire people, let's say like me, or to know that going to a place means that now I've got to worry about not only the collective of the place, but individuals, and then to inspire others to recognize that they also have to worry about other individuals. So I'm on the younger end, I'm on the older end of Chabad rabbis now, but I'm not. I'm on the. I didn't have um, the direct guidance. I mean, I had some interactions a little bit, but direct guidance from the Rebbe's staff. But I've heard from people older than me get a call and say, from the Rebbe secretary, and just like out of the blue and say, so, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, you going to sleep now? Say, no, I'm going to sleep soon. So does every child in your city know the alphabet? No. So how do you sleep? It's a good filter, but it was. I saying this is you can't. It's not just a job. It's the lifestyle, and it's a calling, and it's huge responsibility. But it's a good thing. But the idea was obviously we're not going to be Moses or the Rebbe, but the idea of saying that if someone has an issue here, and it could be a physical issue. If I know someone has a medical issue, I don't say call a doctor. I help them find a doctor because I happen to know a lot of doctors. You want to, it's say, well, I'm a rabbi. What do I know about this? Yeah. Oh, I can be a matchmaker. I can find out who's good. Harvey Gerhardt is the president of the medical staff, and Morrison, you figure it out. But sometimes people, especially when they're in a difficult spot, even smart people, it's hard to find themselves. So here, since it's their problem, not my problem, but I care about it, maybe I can help steer them. And that's part of my religious duty, even though it's not religious duty. It's about finding someone a good lawyer or a good doctor. It's if it's my problem. Something's bothering them. So their toothache is my problem. Okay. Say it again. Okay, so now let's take a look at text 7. And here, go back a little bit to the Torah, because of where he gets it from. That I was saying, because in this week's Torah portion, as I pointed out when we read it, the Rebbe spoke about these are the people who are going to help you inherit the land. And really, what it was going to be was the leaders of each tribe. But it started off with Eliezer and Joshua. who were not tribal princes. The words inherit for you, which refer to the tribal princes, appear in the same passage as the names of Eleazar and Joshua. Eleazar was the high priest, Moses' great nephew, and Joshua was taking over Moses' place. So he's combining two different roles. Eleazar and Joshua are like spiritual global leaders like Moses, and then there's the more local leaders. But it's combined. From this, Rashi, the great primary commentator in the Torah, inferred that the prince's role in the land distribution referred in this passage was related to the leadership capacity of the shadow of Eleazar and Joshua. They were spiritual leaders, similar, although one level down, to Eleazar and Joshua. God explicitly appointed Eleazar and Joshua to administer the land allocation. This was a new appointment separate from their roles as high priest and national leader. Same is true of the tribal princes. God gave them a special appointment related to their roles as responsible for the personal concerns of their constituents. So there is imagery found in Kabbalistic writings from the Ari, Rabbi Yitzchak Gloria, who made Tzfat famous. We were talking about Tzfat before. The way he frames it is, in your mind, vision an image of you have a garden. Your life is a garden at the base of a mountain. And your garden gets its water, its nourishment from water coming down the mountain. And you've etched some lanes into the mountain where the waters, they're conduits, bringing it down, guiding water to your garden. So those lanes are parents and grandparents, our ancestors' souls, help to guide us, God's nourishment and blessing. They can be the righteous people of a generation with whom we're connected to. And this sometimes maybe there's a boulder in the way. So we need to try and unclog it to be able to get more blessing. But the greater the flow of the blessing, the more we see it in our lives. And that's in our prayers, we're praying to God, but we also, we bear in mind, and we say it's a common Jewish, today's my father's birthday. Rest in peace, of blessed memory, passed away in January. I last night, because that's the beginning of the birthday, posted to his, we have a little group of his grandchildren, saying that tonight is Zaydi's birthday, and I'm sure that his soul is soaring from Naches from Udu, and that he's doing his best to channel blessing to us. He's not God, but he's part of the channel, right? So that is grandparents and grandchildren. But it doesn't have to only be that. It's people who care. They're becoming God's agents for blessing. So without becoming grandiose about it, if there's someone in your life who has an issue, and they're not even related to you necessarily, but it doesn't make a difference because we're all related, the family of humanity, and I'm in a position to be able to help them with advice, loneliness, finding a good dentist, whatever. But if I care, then I'm also, in a way, in that I become one of those avenues for God's blessing. First of all, because I help them find a doctor practically, but spiritually, we have a soul connection, and God can send blessing and support to this person through me, through any of us. Okay. In that way, take a look at a very interesting Rashi. As I mentioned, Rashi writes his commentary. He's not a Kabbalistic guy. Maybe separately, yes, but in his commentary, he writes his commentary for 5-year-olds. That's what he said. Just want to help a 5-year-old read and understand the Torah. So earlier, just a few weeks ago in the Torah, Rashi looks at a verse where it's describing something that Moses did it and the Jews did it. Moses, who did it? Was it Moses or the people? And Rashi gives a very interesting to insight. He says Moses is Israel and Israel is Moses. They're inseparable. This is telling a 5-year-old. This isn't Kabbalah. This teaches us that the leader of the generation is the entire generation, for the leader is everything. What does that mean? Leader is everything. It means not that, dear leader. It means that the leader of a generation, if a person is truly a leader, they give themselves over. There's nothing in my life. There's just like there's nothing in my life absent from divine blessing and divine interaction. There's nothing in my life that's detached from that mountain of water coming down. And if a person is a leader, then to their flock, is an important part of that flow. So just to tell you, I know a couple in their 90s, should live and be well. They never come here to shul, but they're not shul people, but they're very identified Jews, wonderful people. They've been a very important part of our beginnings, and now been friends for 33 years. And when I first met the husband, we hit it off. So he was then in his 50s and I was in my 20s, and he totally liked what we were doing, but he was apprehensive about the Rebbe. Personality cult. What's this whole deal? He'd been told different things. He was apprehensive. Not he had a friend. He said, my friend Rosie knows a lot of stuff, and she said it. So I got a lot to talk about. So we won't talk about that up here. We're talking about the community. A few years after that, can't remember exactly when. I think it was 1995. He called me because we had become friends. He called me and he was very, very, very unsettled. His wife had been diagnosed with lung cancer. And I went to see him in his office. We put pneumazuzas in his house. We prayed. He said, is there anything else I can do? I said, I can think of something, but I'm afraid to tell it to you. He says, tell me. He said, me, I think you should go to the Rebbe's grave and say a prayer. You asked me, I'm telling you, move on. He said, I'll do anything. So we went with his wife, and we went to say a prayer by the Rebbe's grave. He was very moved by it. And thank God that issue resolved itself. She went to remission, but he always felt that it was the prayers, by the grave. So he started going there. He'd call me sometimes 6 o'clock in the morning. Where were you at 2 a.m.? I was out there. Where were you? It's like he that was a place for him. Again, he's not a religious guy. Doesn't put on tefillin, except when I corner him. But the thing is, he this was for him a special place of connection. And she had several recurrences, and he always went straight there. I'm just telling you what I experienced here. So it was a Thursday night before Memorial Day. The Rabbinical College had a dinner, and he was supposed to come and sit at the same table, and he called me that afternoon. He can't come. I said, what's going on? His wife had a bad PET scan showed up. Not good. So he was totally. Thank God she's still around. She's doing very well. She was obviously was demoralized. He couldn't come to the dinner. I said, of course not. So he said, but you know what I'm going to do instead of the dinner? I'm going to drive out to the Rebbe's grave. So, cool. I'll eat your portion. So that was the Thursday night. And then he told me, I spoke to him Friday, and he said they're scheduled, because it's Memorial Day, but Tuesday morning, they're going to go and to meet the doctor in Sloan Kettering in Manhattan, but to look at the scans and the reports and see, the radiology report and see what what they're going to do. So, but now they were going to sit with, the chief of the department. So I called him up Tuesday morning early, just to wish him well, to hear, encouraging news at the appointment. Tuesday morning, in those days, I had a women's class, Torah class. I come out of that class, I go to my phone, and there's a message from him. And he says, Rabbi, call me. The Rabbi came through. Hangs up. so I call him up. And I said, what's going on? He says, show this to Dr. Kelson, the chief of we went to meet with him. And he's looking at the PET scan. He says, I don't see anything here. I said, what do you mean? We saw it. There's a report. He says, I know. I don't see anything. They take another test. They can't see anything. So he said, he tells me then, I don't need doctors. I said, no, you need doctors because doctors on the channel. Anyway, just to give you my personal story here, I went to see him. And I brought with me a book with a letter that the Rebbe had written a few months after his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, passed away. He wrote it to the community. And he said, because they're all in mourning the passing of their Rebbe. He was talking about his Rebbe, his father-in-law. And he said, there's so much people are saying about the Rebbe, about my father-in-law. He was a genius and a saint and a person with tremendous commitment and a lover of humanity. He says, all that's true. But it's missing the central point. Central point is that he's a leader. And a leader is someone who channels love and interest and God's energy to each individual. It said that's the fundamental. Everything else is an outgrowth. Fundamental is that this is, as we say here, the leader is everything. Well, doesn't mean the leader is everything doesn't translate well. Is that the leader is like a parent who can, and they're helping to channel God's blessing. And it said he's not just the Rebbe is not just a rabbit's foot, and not and not a doctor. There was a true leader. He passed on, but there's soul, and if you're connected, that's part of the flow of your energy here in the business too. Part of the flow of the blessing. So I want to take a look at we're taking this now a little bit deeper in the spirituality of it. This is from the founder of Chabad, but he's really quoting Kabbalah from the from millennia. See if we can get our minds around this. All the souls in the world were initially incorporated as 28 into the soul of Adam, the first human. The first human was both male and female, Adam and Eve, before they were separated into Adam and Eve. That's a separate conversation which we've had. So the first human was not male, it was humanity, it was human. And that human soul had within it potential branches of all of the people who would be coming forward. Adam's soul differentiated into 613 general soul segments, corresponding to the 248 limbs and 365 sinews in the human body. There are 613 mitzvahs also. Each segment is subdivided into an endless number of specific soul sparks. In other words, so there's an unfolding of the soul tree. These comprise all the souls of the Jewish people from the days of our patriarchs and matriarchs and the 12 tribes until after the coming of the Messiah. At that time, the prophecy, the number of Jews will be like the sand of the ocean that cannot be measured or counted, for their numbers will be fulfilled. God said we're going to be so numerous, we're not so numerous. But when all the souls come to fruition, that will be fulfilled. Know that not only Adam's soul, but Jacob's soul was also comprised of all the Jewish souls from the beginning till the end. So Jacob really incorporated that, because the leader of the family and the leader of the Jewish people, we are known as Bnei Yisrael, we are the children of Israel. Who is Israel? Jacob. Jacob also had that general kind of soul, and we're all offshoots of that. And here it says that the leader of the generation embodies the collective soul from which all individual Jewish souls emerge. Okay, so we're talking about a Jacob, not talking about me and you. We're talking about a Moses, a Jacob, a Rebbe. But it starts from there that we can see that there are souls who are important in this soul structure. There's not a solar system, but a soul system. And in text 10, we have from an ancient Kabbalistic book. Remember, I said before the world is a nasi. The word is a nasi. A nasi means like the president of Israel today is called a nasi, but it's a leader, a prince. Rabbi Judah the prince, who was the author of the core of the Talmud, the Mishnah, he was a great leader. He was called Rabbi Judah the Nasi, which translates as prince. He was called a Nasi, and that's that's in Hebrew. In the Talmud, why? Because it is an acronym for Nitzutze Shel Yaakov Avinu. He was a spark of the patriarch Jacob. Just as Jacob was a collective soul, Rabbi Judah, in his generation, was a Nasi. He was also a collective soul. And that's through the mystery of reincarnation, of one collective soul to another collective soul. Without getting into reincarnation now, what this rabbi is saying, this Kabbalistic or source is saying, is that the idea of there are leaders. And those leaders they're not just there to make sure that everybody has water and food. They're leaders who have like a parent Jacob was biologically the parent of everyone, the father of that whole people. What happens if they're not biological people? But it's the idea is there's the connection of them. So that's how we see leadership. And then we translate it into ourselves, which we'll get to in a second. We're trying to talk about the macro first, what a leader is, or the leaders of the tribes. A Nasi, a true leader in a Jewish spiritual sense, engages with the personal concerns of individuals, driven by deep empathy and care for the well-being of every Jew. That is the leader as the Torah describes it. So if you take a look, we see what text 11 says about Moses, who was also an original leader. When Moses, this is page 30, when Moses, peace be upon him, shepherded Jethro's sheep in the desert. Now, if you just in the narrative of how we're introduced to Moses in the Torah, we're introduced to Moses in the Torah that he's born, and there's a decree on the Jewish people that all male babies are murdered. So his mother, you may have seen this in the movies, his mother puts him into a little boat to save his life. And she's watching, his sister, Miriam, is watching from a distance to make sure. I mean, you can leave your colors. Okay, thank you. Okay. He's watching because she wants to save his life. He's adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. He's raised in the palace. Discovers he's Jewish. He comes out. He defends a Jew. He has to run away for his life because Pharaoh wants to kill him. His adoptive grandfather wants to kill him. He comes to a place, family of Jethro. He marries Jethro's daughter, and he becomes a shepherd. When he's shepherding his sheep, that's when God speaks to him from a burning bush. But he's a shepherd. He's a simple shepherd. He's in a place called Midian. He's off the grid of Egypt, and he's not a leader of the Jewish people. He's a simple shepherd. So how do we get him from him being a simple shepherd to becoming the leader of the Jewish people? It doesn't say. He's a shepherd. And for some reason, God speaks to him from a burning bush and says, you're the guy. So the Medrash says, was there any, aside from all God's spiritual, godly, Kabbalistic calculations, was there any precipitating event that made God say, I like you. You're going to be the leader of the Jewish people. So the Medrash, the Talmudic rabbis tell us that when Moses was out there shepherding Jethro's sheep in the desert, nobody knows him. I mean, very few people. He's not on the radar. A young goat broke away, a kid, and Moses chased it until it arrived at a shady area. When it came in the shade, it found a brook and stopped to drink. When Moses arrived, he said, I didn't know you were running because you're thirsty. You poor thing. You're tired. Carried the goat on his shoulders and walked back to the herd. So Moses is in charge of the collective. He's got to take care of the group. One unruly goat runs away. What's he going to do? So first, it's worth something. You want to get it, but maybe he's frustrated. What's wrong with you? He's attentive. It's an animal. It's a goat. He's attentive to the goat's emotional state. It signals the goat to something. So you weren't being unruly. You're thirsty. So he carries the goat on his shoulders back to the herd. And God observed, if you have compassion to provide for sheep that belong to a human, I swear that you will shepherd my sheep, Israel. So the image of the Jewish leader is someone who has the bandwidth, and it's mind-boggling, the bandwidth not just to think about what the group needs, because that's important, that's leadership, but to be open to and attentive to and caring about the needs of an individual, which is, and again, I don't want to keep us too long, but another story that blows my mind was another, and I've mentioned this before also because it's to me so impactful. Another one of the obituaries that I read after the Rebbe passed away that grabbed me, but for unlikely sources for me to because I got it. I knew the Rebbe pretty much, and I didn't.
There's another analogy in that last sentence. Instead of saying that belonged to a human, you could say that belonged to another human, which means that he's taking responsibility for the flock of another, just as the second half of the sentence says.
Yeah, I think that's a good insight from the translation. What the Hebrew is saying is, if you care so much about the flock of a mere human, I know I can trust you with the flock of the divine. I get your point, but that's more from the English translation. What I'm saying is, I mean, I'll make this brief. There was an op-ed piece from a rabbi known Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. Some of you may know him. He's very well known. He's not a Chabad guy. I think he was like conservative, maybe more tradition, but he's a brilliant guy. Wrote a lot of books. His grandfather was a Chabad rabbi. I have his grandfather's book. His father lived in Flatbush. He wasn't a Chabadster per se, but he was an observant guy, and Joe did his own thing. I didn't know his father. I didn't know his father really existed. His name was Shmuel, but until I read this, but Shmuel Telushkin was an accountant in Flatbush, and because he had the Chabad connection, he did books, the books for 770 for Chabad. So Rabbi Telushkin writes, and as a rabbi trying to care about people in the hospital and so on, it's mind blowing for me. He writes that his father in the 70s, his father had a stroke. He goes, and he was laid up in NYU. And every day, the Rebbe's secretary would call the hospital room to see how he's doing. I could do that too. Then it says one day he gets a call from the Rebbe's secretary and who says that, first of all, how's your father doing? I had a stroke, he's not doing well. Said an accounting question came up in the office, and the Rebbe suggested we call your father. The man was calling him Rabbi Krinsky. So Joe Telushkin he said, Rabbi Krinsky, my father had a stroke. You're calling me in NYU. I go, he's not in shape. He said, Rabbi Telushkin, I know that. The Rebbe knows that. I'm just following orders. He told me, bring this question to your phone. So he said, put down the phone. And he said, Dad, they're calling from 770 with an accounting question. Can you hit? So he said, yeah. So he asked his father the question, and his father said, oh, the answer should be simple. We do this, this, and this. So and I get a chill every time I said it. It struck me that the Rebbe was sitting in Crown Heights, not just thinking about, oh, he's in the hospital, sending flowers or chocolate. He says, what does Shmuel Telushkin do? He's probably laying in bed thinking, my productive days are over. So he threw him a softball. Just it's like you could feel, I still got it. It's unbelievable. Because to have that kind of thought and sensitivity, and you're thinking about hundreds of thousands of, I don't know how his brain worked, but the broadness of his heart. I mean, and that's what Joel Telushkin wrote. He said, I was taken by his empathy. Clearly, my father said it's a simple question. The Rebbe is a mathematician, engineer. He can do it himself. He was giving him something because you understand when someone is just, God forbid, when they're facing something like that, you wonder, has my life changed? Can I still be productive? And to help them feel productive, that's a lot more than just sending them a nice card. So the final one, text 12. This is from the Rebbe. On page 32. A leader is not just someone we obey and follow. Rashi said a leader is everything. What does that mean? If the leader is everything, it follows that the leaders regard all Jews equally. They're connected to everyone, and each one, even if one child is more connected or not, one's more respectful or whatever, or calls more often, a child's a child. It follows that leaders care about every single Jew, every single person of the flock, even those who run away. Our sages of blessed memory taught that God tested Moses to see if he was worthy of Jewish leadership by gauging his regard for the sheep that ran away. Paying attention to the sheep in the herd doesn't prove we're faithful shepherds. That's your job. Only when a sheep flees the herd and we do our best to pursue and bring it back do we prove that we are faithful shepherds. It's specifically when it's a challenge that you show your mettle. When we regard the sheep that breaks away the same way we regard those always afoot, it proves that we are faithful shepherds. This demonstrates that Jewish unity is most pronounced within Moses because the leader is everything. The leader regards all Jews equally. And now bring this to us. What is true of Moses is a lesson for every Jew. It is explained in many places that there's a spark of Moses in every Jew. Each of us has a piece of Moses. Therefore, each of us can take personally the lessons of Moses. So just like Moses cared about the entire flock, even those running away, what is everything that's said of Moses is a lesson for every Jew. If there's a spark of Moses in each of us, we should be able to follow the guidance of the Moses spark house. This also relates to what we learned from Moses about loving our fellow Jews. We should regard all Jews, the simplest and the most profound, the wandering sheep and the present sheep, equally as Moses did. And we do our best to encourage every Jew to do one more mitzvah out of love. So I'll leave that there. So that's kind of, it's the mindset of Chabad, but I don't want to look at it and say, okay, we now just analyze a secret of Chabad. This is really, it's a lesson to each of us. Because we're all leaders and we all have the ability to care. And even if it's about a single neighbor or a single friend, it's to recognize that we're connected and their problem isn't just me that would be helping them with their problem, but really it's my problem too. So I wish you a great week. If anyone wants any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Okay, be well.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye-bye.